anything related to FPL, whether it's captaincy or transfer decisions, make sure you follow Fantasypedia on Twitter and FPL Variants, our YouTube channel, for regular podcast content, if that is what you fancy. And it's great to be back. I am your host, Zeeshan, and I have with me Anshuman, my co host. How's it going, buddy?
Yeah, we're finally back with a lot of technical glitches in the last 2 weeks. I mean, let's address it. We tried to live stream last week and we couldn't just because of technical glitches. But we're back, guys. We're back with a long podcast answering all of your questions ahead of Gaming 23 and probably essentially Gaming 25, 28, and 32 because we're going to discuss free hit strategies in this podcast. In depth, we're going to discuss Arsenal, Manchester City, Mitoma specifically, Tottenham, and Liverpool as well. So it's going to be a good podcast, and we'll dive into a lot of data as well.
Yep. A lot of talking points, like you said, Anshuman. And yeah, like always, I mean, it's become like a norm these days, right? We always start with Arsenal because the
Yep.
players are always in demand, right at the top of the table. Very good underlying data. So yes, business as usual. Let's start with Arsenal, Anshuman. Which are the players that we are looking? And again, it's a bit of a mixed territory, right? Because a lot of people in the FPL sphere, some of them have maybe one or two Arsenal attackers, but we're clearly seeing now that this is the team that we should be targeting. So, which would be your three picks for the Arsenal spot?
So
Tell
I
us.
mean, we discussed this briefly as well last time, and it's pretty much a generic thing right now that Saka and Ketia and Odegaard are the primary three because of minutes, and we this has been more solidified last game week, where for people who have not been watching football or catching up, Martinelli was subbed off earlier because Arsenal were losing, and he was not kept on. So that tells me two things. One, it's obviously a minutes risk, and he could be subbed off or even dropped if required. And Trossard is a genuine threat now. So I think we should just directly address major questions like regarding Martinelli because if you have Saka and Keita and Odegaard, I don't think you need to worry about. So in that scenario, perfectly set. But if you have, let's say, a Saka and Kitia and a White slash Gabriel, then we can discuss that as well. Should you switch to a three attack or stick with the defender? I think the major two talking points should be White and Martinelli. And personally, in terms of Martinelli, yes, the data is there, everything is looking good. But I think, given the fact that the minutes are a risk right now without the European games, I think it's a switch. It's an easy switch because you need to get more and more minutes out of the Arsenal players. They double in 25 now as well. So you're getting a double in 23, a double in 25, a fixture in 28 as well. So essentially, that's a lot. It's a chunk of fixtures that you want to target. And I think if minutes are guaranteed, especially Saka and Odegaard, which look like more guaranteed minutes, I think I would go there.
Yep, that makes sense. Just one point, right? If you have Martinelli and you're looking for a sideways move, and we've seen this a lot of times in a double game week, the variance could be brutal. So that is, I think, one thing to keep in mind that yes, a Martinelli to Saka, for example, is a very obvious move, but we've not seen Arteta bench Martinelli yet. Yes, we've seen Trossard eat into his minutes, and he also took off Partey the other day, who happens to be a key player for us. So just talking about what's going on in Arteta's mind. So it could be that it was tactical, and it's very clear that Trossard is someone who Arteta looks at as a like-to-like replacement for Martinelli. I still think that he should be okay for starts for now, unless we see a drastical, drop in terms of the underlying numbers and how Arteta looks at him as an attacking outlet. Uh, Obviously, we're looking at the data here. We've looked at it last week as well and the week before that. That he continues to dominate these, things like penalty area touches, which is a very key factor. So uh, we use this term a lot, but I think Martinelli right now is a don't buy, don't sell territory for me, because you don't want to get into that situation where you're buying someone, even though he's cheap, but it's not really looking good. But if you sell him, and let's say Martinelli gets like 65 minutes in both the game, in the first game he gets like 65, 70, starts and gets another 70 minutes in the other game in the double game week, and he scores a goal each. You're looking at 10, 15 points. So yeah, I think that could be a bit risky. What do you think? Like,
I don't
personally,
agree.
I
I
think we should hold
majorly
on.
don't agree with a no sell situation because I genuinely think that if you can make up points in Saka and Odegaard, you got to go there. Got to go there. For another reason is that Martinelli is not a player which is very helpful in a low block against a low block. The opponents that are coming up against Arsenal now could be setting up slightly deeper, where Trossard could be a much better option. One, so there's a genuine chance of him getting benched. Second, again, I think that The stat that he's majority good at, which is penalty area touches, might drop again against a low block team because you can't penetrate the penalty area so easily. So I think there will always be the chance where he can haul because he has those numbers. But again, the split of the points will always be majority. Looks like to be between Odegaard, Saka, and Nketiah. So if you have those two or three, I think you don't have to worry about Martinelli, and you got to play the minutes because essentially you're looking at 5 games out of 38 Arsenal potential games throughout the season, which is a big chunk. So it's about 15% of the season. So you need to get most minutes out of these 5 games, which are in close succession, so that you can get the best out of the Arsenal attackers. So I think that's a big point to me. I think Martin, if you have him, if you can take a -4, I would sell him as a priority. Unless you have something very bizarre in your team and you need to restructure, so there's an injury or there's someone like a Salah still sitting. Maybe we'll talk about him, that if he's still sitting in your team, you might be lucky, but you get the essence. So if you have a player who's injured and you want to replace him first, then I get it. You can hold Martinelli, but otherwise, if you have a free, you have no other fires to put out. I think it's an easy sideways switch to Odegaard or Saka if you can.
So, uh, one point that you said that, he's not really great against low blocks. So I'm just looking at Arsenal's immediate fixtures. They've got Brentford and Man City in the double game week. Uh, I don't think these are the teams that are going to sit deep. And we've seen it with Brentford. They even did this against City. Yes, they were sitting, but they're ready to take their chances. And they caused a lot of trouble to Manchester City. We saw, I think, Tony scored twice in that game. And when you're watching games, it's very evident that a lot of times Martinelli is the one who ends up taking central positions when Arsenal are on the counter attack. Saka is always there; he's always looking to cut inside from the right. But I think that is a thread. The fact that you just said that, when teams are sitting back, Martinelli may not be as useful. But when the teams are having a go at Arsenal, I think these games suit Martinelli. A game like Brentford, a game like Man City are not going to sit back versus Arsenal because I think they look at this as a statement game, right? One versus two. There could be goals in that game. Even Aston Villa, the new manager and the
I
way
think
they've
Unai
been
Emery is
setting
known
up
to
under
sit
him.
back and absorb pressure. I think.
So
I am not sure that. I
I
think I
just have
agree
a
with the
feeling that
Brentford and City part. And Martinelli will be better on the counter attacks. But again, if Martinelli is managing about 60 minutes in both the games and Odegaard is managing 150 plus, I still think you might want to have the player which is staying on the pitch for a longer time.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, the jury is still out, but it makes sense when you consider for anyone who's looking for a neutral opinion, right? You're looking
Exactly.
at more expected minutes, and the players who've been looking a lot more consistent, a lot more nailed. So in that sense, switching him out, or even the fact that we've discussed this a lot, Saka is on penalty. So even if he has two bad games and he gets one penalty in each game, you're just looking at a 15, 16 pointer potentially. So yeah, that's there with Saka and Odegaard.
Yeah.
They have their
And
plus points, more
and
neutral points, I
also
would
and
say.
also when
Yeah,
you look at Saka, so let's say you're in a situation where you have Nketiah, Odegaard, and possibly White slash Gabriel, basically a defender. Martinelli to Saka gives you a captaincy option as well. So he's giving you more minutes in 23, a game in 24 again, and captaincy in 20, potentially captaincy in 25 because Arsenal double there. So you probably want to play your chip there as well. Like in terms of Saka could get a penalty, he is on set pieces, he's guaranteed for 90 minutes. So all of that has to be factored in. I think that's the only logic. Basically, it's basically a minutes versus variance going against you kind of a risk, and possibly knowing that there are 5 fixtures close by, I would bet on the minutes of a player.
that is true. And yes, it is a variance issue. I am personally afraid of the variance, but it makes sense to switch. And there is more upside in the future. Speaking of double game weeks, and Arsenal are not the only team that have a double game week this time around. There is another team in town, and it's Manchester City. Also have a double game week, and yeah,
Just
we
before we
just
switch to Manchester City, I also, so since a lot of people are also asking this, let's say you have a situation where you have, let's say if you have Gabriel, I think he's one of the best defenders in the game in terms of XG. So he's accumulated the maximum XG as far as I know, because he's lethal on set pieces, and Arsenal do a decent job. They've practiced a lot of set pieces. You can see that they bring a lot from the training ground. But if you have someone like a White, who we have seen is a minutes rotation now, and Tomiyasu is breathing down his neck. He could be dropped a game. Maybe he could be subbed out the 55, 58th minute. Personally, I like the 60-minute sub off because Arsenal could keep a clean sheet the 60 minutes. He subs off and then they can concede. I'm totally fine with that. But the problem is if White has a risk of getting dropped, Would you want to switch White to a Gabriel, or would you want to switch White to an Arsenal front three attack? Because the fixtures are so lucrative, you might want to go for the best attack and capture points.
Yeah, I think it has to be a switch to an Arsenal attack. I think a switch to Gabriel is also fine, and there's no doubt that Gabriel is very attacking. And we've discussed this a lot initially as well when Gabriel and Saliba were. I think Saliba was the one who started getting on the score sheet earlier, but I think we discussed that Gabriel is the better pick. And historically, even last season and the season before that, he scored around 4 or 5 goals per season. So he's a proven goal scorer in that Arsenal defense. Just that we've seen recently that Arsenal defensively have been a bit shaky. So they are a team that will always score goals. There's no doubt about that. Yes, the Everton game 1-0, they looked a bit flat, but I think that was just a one-off. I think they will continue to score goals. The best attacking outlet in the league right now. Uh, what you said, investment in the front three instead of having one defender and two attackers. I think that makes sense. This is the time to just be aggressive, get three Arsenal attackers. It could be, the front three. If you have Martinelli, then probably you have him and you've got Nketiah and Saka. But yeah, I think the optimal Arsenal three right now for me would be a Saka, Nketiah, and Odegaard. Those are the three that you should get. And yeah, someone like White definitely has to go. Uh,
So for
what do you
me
think?
as well, because I can look at White going. So there are two things that I want to put out here. If your team structure somewhat looks like an City defender, White, short Trippier, and let's say if it's a Patterson, then fine. If it's someone else like a Mings or a Bueno, you're in a situation where two of your defenders will definitely blank in game week 25. So in that case, you might want to hold White and let go of Shaw because you won't need Shaw beyond 25. I think they have okay fixtures where you can bench him, or you might not play him ahead of City Trippier, a City defender Trippier and Arsenal defender. So in that case, probably you let go of Shaw because you want a playing defender in 25. But otherwise, I think letting go of White in it to maybe a City defender or maybe a Tarkowski from Everton who has a double in 25 as well, it allows you to maximize the points in the attack. So the fixtures are good for Arsenal. They're still second on the ticker, and you know that the points in the Arsenal attack are usually very spread out. So you won't really see a lot of hauls from one player regularly. So Saka might haul in one game week, but you don't expect him to continue that haul in the next coming game weeks because the points are usually spread. And that way, essentially, you can capture as many points as you can from the Arsenal attack. And not to say they're the best attack in the league at the moment. So I think if against Brentford they can show confidence, or even against City they can show that confidence again after the Everton game, I think switching from White to an Arsenal attacker could be beneficial.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
And
just yeah,
purely the case of if you're going triple Arsenal, just be there at the right time. Just buy the lottery tickets early, just
yeah.
before the double game week. Because you're not just getting one double game week, there's another one coming as well, and a good fixture versus Villa before that. So yeah, I think this is the time. Just be aggressive, especially if you are White. With Gabriel, maybe I might consider once that okay, because of the thing that we
He has
discussed
a
about how
genuine
many
XG
times.
of his own as well. So yeah,
Yep, yep.
and
That
also just to a lot of news around Gabriel Jesus as is back and everything. He is back to individual training, so he's still about 3 to 4 weeks at least away from getting 90 minutes or even a start. So I think for people who are worried about Nketiah being a danger pick for game week 25 or rotation risk or getting dropped in 25, I think he's pretty much safe. Uh, I think game week 25 falls on 25th February, around that period, about 4 weeks from now. And I think the worst case scenario would be Gabriel Jesus getting subbed on at the 60, 70th minute from Nketiah in that game week. But I don't see Gabriel Jesus starting game week 25 anytime soon. It's still a very close call. It's a knee injury for people who don't realize it. Usually, knee injuries take a lot of rehab time despite the player showing high signs of fitness. Even if he's looking good, managers do want to ease it in. And I think even Arteta has mentioned that he doesn't want to push Gabriel Jesus right into it. He'll probably ease him and he'll give him a couple of sub-ons and then he'll start the games. So I think for now, Nketiah is fine, but keep that in mind because you might be looking at three Arsenal attackers and forwards, which are now cheap to hold till game week 32 or per se 28, depending on your strategy. But you might have to remove Nketiah coming down post game week 25. So for people planning ahead, keep that in mind that 25 could be a dead end for Nketiah, looking at how well Gabriel Jesus is recovering.
Yeah, and I think it's a blessing. So a lot of the Gabriel Jesus has news, the speculation that he is back or he could be back. in the next game week or the week after. I think it's the speculation comes from some of the interviews that Gabriel Jesus himself has given, and players tend to be very excited about, oh, I'm back, I'm ready to go. But managers, like you said, are a lot more cautious. So Arteta has said this a few times that he wants to take it easy, given the nature of the injury and the fact that, like you said, that if Gabriel Jesus is fit enough for a start, we'll see him, get like a couple of cameos initially. So it could be the best situation where we know exactly when Gabriel Jesus is ready to start. And when that happens, we can just move Enkitia to a Gabriel Jesus. So right now, if you're scared about his minutes for whatever reasons, which is absolutely based on nothing, who are you going to take him out for? You're not going to take him out for Jesus. You'll probably take him out for another forward, which does not make sense. So you'd rather hold on to him as just an easy swap to Jesus when the time comes.
Yeah, probably after Game 25. Anyways, I mean, you can just hold on for him for now and then figure out when Jesus is back.
Yep,
Okay, and
that
that
is.
I think concludes most of Arsenal questions. I think we can move on to Manchester City data, and Z, our Manchester City correspondent, as we say, can take us through the data.
Yep, City have been in the news for all the right and wrong reasons recently, but we look at the right reasons, the things that we have to focus in terms of FPL. Now, despite all the stuff about how they have been inconsistent in the league, we are just looking at the underlying data right now. So this is the Manchester City underlying data from game week 17 to 22. If you look at the attacking data and the defensive data, they're right up there. They're in the top three. So in terms of goals, they're third. In terms of XG, they're right at the top. Uh, Shots, big chances, again top of the table. Even defensively, they're doing really well. Edison has been a bit erratic, so that's been one of the reasons why they've ended up conceding a bit more goals, I would say, compared to what you would expect. So that has been a concern. I think 13 goals in like 5 or 6 game weeks is not good, but the underlying data is fine. Another positive, I think, from a City perspective, would be that Diaz is nearing full fitness and Laporte could feature regularly. So even though we should not really look at them as potential assets. I think that is good news if you're considering someone like a Nathan Aki, and we've spoken about him earlier. He's in Pep's good books, like scoring a goal every now and then. Cancelo is not a part of Manchester City anymore, so that is even better for Nathan Ake's expected minutes. So I think this is the time where if you're looking to invest in City, especially ahead of the double game week, despite the inconsistency in terms of results in the recent weeks, I think you can look at some players, and Nathan Ake is definitely one of them. In terms of attack, you've got Haaland. I don't think anyone is even considering removing him. You just have to leave him in there and captain him most game weeks. Now, the big discussion is about which midfielder should you pick, and we have got two big names. One is Kevin De Bruyne, and one is Riyad Mahrez. So we're gonna do like a comparison of these two. Anshuman, which of these two would you suggest to our viewers, Mahrez or Kevin De Bruyne, or both?
So
Let's
yeah,
say.
so just a background data on Kevin De Bruyne. When you compare his per 90 stats, game week 1 to 16 versus post restart 17 to 22, there's a massive drop in numbers. So it's not just a small drop. Yes, there's a minutes drop as well. So post restart, he's been benched as well twice, I think, against Tottenham, both against Tottenham. But there's a massive drop per 90. Although silver lining to this is when he came on against Tottenham, he looked very good. He created one big chance and three chances, which was the best. Yeah, and he was one of the best players on the pitch that game, even per se 30 minutes. But now the situation is a lot of players have Mahrez, and certain section players have Kevin De Bruyne. So do you make the switch from De Bruyne to a Mahrez for a hit or a free, or do you stick with Mahrez and maybe go to De Bruyne or not? Personally, with given the data Mahrez has, if you have Mahrez, it's an absolutely hold. There's no doubt in my head that you should even consider switching him to someone else. Although when it comes to De Bruyne, you can be in a situation where you want to sell for a Mahrez because yes, he's the informed player. He will probably start the two games. I think he's not going to get dropped against Arsenal. I think the Villa fixture is pretty much essential after the Tottenham loss as well. So he is most likely to start against Aston Villa as well. And also Foden is not fully fit, so that also probably puts him into a more nailed on position where he should be starting. I think Alvarez is still not that player who can start the right wing like Gabriel Jesus did, so Mahrez is pretty nailed in that situation. So, but would I switch Kevin De Bruyne to Mahrez? Personally, I'm in the same boat, and I wouldn't. So here's why. Uh, I have Kevin De Bruyne, and he's most likely nailed to start the next two games, which is Aston Villa at home, Arsenal away, and those are the double game games in 23. Mahrez expected to start both. and the points could be split. So you can't really predict points in terms of the City team. I know Mahrez is pretty much more upper hand at the moment. He could outscore De Bruyne, but I am okay taking that gamble because in game week 24, when City play Nottingham Forest, I just want to bring up the fixtures for City. They play Nottingham Forest 2 days or 3 days per se ago before the Leipzig game. So that is when you start worrying about Mahrez because he could be dropped in the Nottingham Forest game, which is just 2 days after the Arsenal game. So if let's say Arsenal is a KG tough game, which it will be, and Mahrez starts that game as we are expecting him to, Nottingham Forest becomes a direct threat to his game time. Again, he is a preferred asset in the UCL. Everyone knows this. So he gets probably dropped in Nottingham Forest. You see him start in the UCL game. I expect him to play against Bournemouth because I think FA Cup Bristol is probably not a game where he'll start. So in the next 4 games, I see him starting 3 at max, 2 for sure. But with De Bruyne, what you can do is you can play him in game week 23, where he can start Villa and Arsenal, and you can switch him to someone like a Foden slash Grealish, depending on Foden's fitness and Grealish form, who I expect to start both Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth. Especially Foden, because Foden is not going to start 23, most likely because he's not fit, which gives him enough ample of rest time as well and fitness to recover his fitness. And historically, started the last out of the last 6 games, Foden has started 5 against Bournemouth. He's probably a preferred asset, and we've seen Pep do this as well. So he prefers a certain set of players against certain opposition because of his stats. And I think Foden is one of them against Bournemouth. And against Nottingham Forest, it becomes an obvious minutes congestion issue where if he doesn't start against Arsenal, he's very likely to start against Nottingham Forest. So I think in that you might have the upper hand having De Bruyne, and you might outscore players who are like owners of Mahrez, because if you have Mahrez, you probably won't sell him for a Foden sideways move against Nottingham Forest and take the chance still, because he's such a player that you expect him to still get some minutes and still get attacking returns. But with De Bruyne, I think you're in a better situation that way.
Yep, I think I agree with pretty much. So I've got a lot of questions on Twitter about, a simple question like, in the next 3 games, for example, for Mahrez, how many do you expect him to start? Maybe two, and a
I think
cameo
too.
off the bench in one of them. Now the thing with Guardiola, and this is like he's a manager unlike any other manager, right? What he's thinking in a particular game week might be totally different to what he would be thinking about a week or two from now. And suddenly we saw how Foden was really nailed, and we thought that, okay, this is the season where Foden is gonna maybe start 33 or 34 league games, but suddenly he's out of favor. So we don't really know what he's thinking, and I think he's got so many options out wide. And the bad thing is that all of them are pretty much average wingers, with all due respect, apart from Foden, who is out of favor as well. So we don't know what he's thinking. And the part where you mentioned about going from Mahrez to KDB in maybe the next game week, or the game week after, that could be a viable thing, because I don't think KDB is gonna stay out of the picture for a long time.
No, I
One of
don't
the
think
reasons.
Mahrez to Kevin De
Yeah.
Bruyne will be a viable thing. The opposite is still viable this week. I think you
Not
can't go
this
De
week.
Bruyne. Yeah,
I think in the future, in the future game weeks, because I think De Bruyne will have to play, because a major problem against Tottenham for Man City was that they were not able to create chances for Haaland. So Haaland made a lot of great runs, but no one was really able to pick out that pass. Now, like you said, that once Kevin De Bruyne came on in the last 20-30 minutes, he was at least trying to do those things. So I think this is a very glaring issue, and Guardiola has probably seen it, and he will like to address it. So right now, if you've got Mahrez, I think you hold on to him. If you've got De Bruyne, you again hold on to them. I think a sideways move right now might not make sense. But as you said, that once Champions League comes into the into the scenario, and we're looking at fixtures coming thick and fast and possible rotation. I think in those cases, a De Bruyne might be a lot more nailed than Mahrez. So
yeah, that could happen.
when you look at a Bournemouth, yeah, I think De Bruyne, despite the fact that he's a bit more expensive, he could be worth it. Another thing that sort of catches my eye is that we're looking at De Bruyne's underlying data right now, and clearly there has been a drop off from what it was from earlier in the season, where he was on fire. And we've discussed that his underlying expected points in the recent weeks have still been pretty much on par with Kane, but he's not delivering actual points. So that has been a struggle. Now, a struggling De Bruyne still matches the expected points of a Kane and a lot of great players in the league. So I think once he starts getting those regular starts, it's been a rhythm issue. I think after the World Cup, he needs to get back into the rhythm, and I think once he does that, we'll we have this game week coming up, I'm sure, where he's going to get 15, 20, 25 points. I'm very sure about De Bruyne. Sadly, I don't have him in my team right now, but I think it could be if he gets 2 starts this game week, and he loves us playing against us. We've seen it in the past. So I just feel that De Bruyne Hall coming, but yes, I would not take Mahrez out for him purely because he is safe for
Mahrez is
now. But
fine.
yeah, this always the fear with De Bruyne. Yep, yep, yep.
I mean that's probably some City bias speaking from Z as well. But I just want to highlight what I think in terms of formation and City. So we've seen a certain template with Pep this season. He's preferring certain formation or certain players against certain oppositions. I think City versus Villa and Arsenal versus City, he plays his best 11. I think he ought to play that best 11. So I think De Bruyne and Mahrez both start. Nottingham is when I expect Mahrez probably or De Bruyne probably to get dropped and Alvarez start in his place, and it could be a flat 4-4-2 like it happened last time and Foden to start. Bournemouth again, I expect everyone to start, even Mahrez. So just a caveat: if you have Kevin De Bruyne, hold. If you have Mahrez, yes, hold. Although there's absolutely nothing wrong going from De Bruyne to a Mahrez, but if you hold that move for another game week, you can potentially get a Foden against a nailed Foden against Nottingham and Bournemouth, which could be explosive fixtures. So when you're looking at a City player or the lottery ticket fixtures, holding De Bruyne and making the move next week instead of a Mahrez to maybe a Foden, maybe it could be Mahrez next week as well, but just delaying the move for a week will give you more clarity into it, and you can buy the lottery ticket better. That's what I think. And if you have Mahrez, you just hold him. You don't make the sideways move. I don't think it's worth it. He's in form. He's potentially will start 3 out of 4 and play some minutes in the fourth game as well. So you probably ought to just hold him and see how it turns out to be.
Yeah. I think I'm probably the only one keen on De Bruyne, but
Yeah,
yep, I think that
I
makes sense.
don't. Yeah, I'm holding him only because of the double. I genuinely, if it was not a double, I would request like I would pitch selling him because he's not putting up those numbers. So when you're in a certain price tag, Kane on the same price tag is delivering, and we'll talk about Kane as well. So if he's delivering at the same price tag, I mean, De Bruyne has to justify the price tag at some point, and you can't attach your feelings beyond a point to him, and he probably would
Yep.
have
So
had to go.
yeah, yeah. I personally don't have him, but I think this could be. We'll find out after this double gaming. I think this
Yeah.
and narratives sort of change every week. I remember Kane sort of scoring 2 versus Palace, and before that, no one was really talking about him 2 weeks back. Suddenly, he's like a hot favorite, and he could have a couple of blanks, and we'll be talking the other way around. But yes, right now, Kane is a selling point. Let's move on from Man City, and we look at
Just one more question on Man City.
yeah,
Most of us have one defender, I think, or maybe let's say there are three scenarios. People who have three players, which is a defender, midfielder, and attacker. All of us have Haaland, so that's a separate scenario. If you have a defender and an attacker, would you get a midfielder from City this game week and attack the double,
yep, definitely.
or
If
would you
if you
try?
if you just have two City players and just one defender and obviously Haaland, I'll go for KDB. I think there is I'm sure that he will start. Honestly, even though I own Mahrez in my team personally, I'm not confident of 2 stars. With De Bruyne, I am sure, and it purely goes down to the fact that I mentioned that City lack creativity when KDB is not on the pitch, and it's a huge issue. Someone like Haaland making the runs that he makes, getting 0 shots in a game, in a Premier League game, is not acceptable. And I think the coach will address it. So I expect that to change. And that is the reason why I'm so keen on De Bruyne, despite not owning him, I sort of see. So yes, De Bruyne would be my pick. If you have that
If
one City spot, you have to get him.
if that means
ASAP.
sacrificing a Bruno with a good Leeds fixture and Leicester fixture coming up, or a Kane against West Ham and Leicester, would you do it?
It's so
Because
purely because
that's
of the
the
fact
only
that
natural way to fund De Bruyne now that everyone has Bruno in this game week or probably has either Kane.
yep,
Go
yep.
ahead. So would you sacrifice either of them? Because I
So
wouldn't.
the way I look at it, and obviously this is something that we'll cover a bit more in detail. Now we're looking at Bruno, who's not exactly the same price as De Bruyne, but they're sort of similar in terms of price point. So what I would plan in my head is, get Bruno out, get KDB, and target City's immediate fixtures, and then a potential double game be coming up for Liverpool. So you switch a KDB to Salah. So the issue with getting Kane out and adjusting your you know the whole structure of your team, it could be a bit tedious. Bruno to KDB is pretty much straightforward. Let's say Bruno scores a goal, and I have not been a big. Yes, he scored a penalty in this game week. He has another game week to go. I don't think he's a player that you should be scared of in FPL at least this season. He's playing as an eight. He's not the same old Bruno who you would score 10 to 12 penalties in a season. He was pretty much playing as a second striker back in the day, not anymore. So I think it's a viable move. Bruno to KDB, and then you switch KDB out for Salah in 25. Why not?
I mean, I'm not sure if I would remove Bruno for a De Bruyne just because it's a double. I would consider maybe if you don't have De Bruyne and Mahrez either or, I would prefer Mahrez given the fact that he's more explosive and I expect him to start the double game week fixtures at least.
Yeah.
Another question: if you have just Haaland, let's say you have Haaland and a defender, would you go for a midfielder or go for a defender? So that's also a scenario where you because there is more rotation in the attack and the points are more spread. Would you go for a nailed down defender, someone like an if you let's say you have Akanji, would you go for an Ake, or would you let go and still go for the lottery ticket and for the points because the fixtures are very juicy considering Nottingham and Forest in the next three?
Yeah, I think you have to play the fixtures, right? When you're looking at a double game week and such plum fixtures following that, you have to play the fixture. Then again, so there is a lot of potential rotation among the attackers, but I think it's a similar case among defenders as well. And I know Akanji has started a lot of games, but that's been the case during phases where most of the key defenders have been out. Now, obviously, Stones is out again, but in my opinion, the two first choice centre backs are now coming back into the picture, building their fitness slowly. I will never be sure of any of their expected minutes, to be honest, apart from RK. And, because of reasons that we've discussed so many times about RK, about how Pep is suddenly favoring him and, Cancelo
Yeah.
has left. If Cancelo was still here, then maybe I would consider an Edison or a Cancelo or another centre back and a Cancelo because you know that, okay, the old Cancelo used to start every single game. Now the dynamics have changed. Also, the way that City have been lining up recently, for some reason, Pep is playing that back three. So there are no attacking fullbacks in the formation anymore. There's an LCB, there's a CCB, and there's an RCB, and the right back a lot of times is Rico Lewis, who's tucking in as a second uh, defensive midfielder alongside Rodrigo. So clearly a tactical shift. So there are no out and out attacking fullbacks that you're looking at. So which is the reason why RK is an all right option. But if you're looking to add to it, it has to be another City midfielder for sure. Double
And
defense, I think, is strict no. Yep.
just because you mentioned Rico Lewis, do you think there's still a chance? As Pep seems persistent about his 3-2-5 formation, and which essentially means that Rico Lewis will start somewhere either on the right or in the CDM role. He's getting more minutes essentially. So would you still take a punt or still is a no for us as we discussed earlier?
Yeah, I mean, if you still have him, I think it does not. I'm not a big fan of sideway moves unless it's very obvious in a double game week. In a single game week is fine because it's a lot of uncertainty, right? Maybe Rico Lewis starts both. I'm sure he starts at least one out of the two double game week fixtures. So if you still have him or you've had him for a lot of while, I don't think his expected minutes are that great, but he should start at least one. So I'll keep him. I don't think you should buy Rico Lewis as such. He's just a filler. And the thing is that he takes up a Manchester City spot, which is I
Yeah.
think very vital. Despite the fact that they've not been returning consistent points recently, the underlying data suggests that that will soon change. They will be back among points. So you have to play a bit safer in terms of expected minutes, I think. So yeah, don't buy him.
Okay, two final questions and we'll answer and wrap up City quickly. Would you sell someone like a Stones, a Kanji, Cancelo? Let's say you have Stones and Cancelo. It's a direct sell for sure, but would you sell it for a City defender or would you triple up on the City attack? And the second question is Haaland the best triple captaincy option again left ahead in Game Week 23?
Yeah, I think the second question, the answer is very obvious. It's yes, and
No
you
love for
you have to.
Arsenal's double game week in 25?
I think again, I keep going. I know the outcomes could be different, but who is the player you think could score back-to-back hat tricks? And we've seen this player do this,
And
regardless of the
concentration of
card.
points, yeah. Basically
Yeah,
concentration
yeah,
of points.
and he can just do it, right? Three goals, three shots, three goals. He's that kind of a player. It has to be Haaland. So I
Yeah.
think if you still have your triple captaincy chip, you should just play for him. The first question again, that again we go back to the team structure, right? So if you've got two attackers already, and if you've got a Stones or a Cancelo maybe, then I think a switch to Ake makes sense. These things come down to your risk appetite and whether or not you are adventurous. Because if you just got one free transfer and you've got Stones and you're looking to take him out and remove another midfielder and get another extra City midfielder in, then you're looking at potentially a -4. So it's a very, I think, a team specific question. I would just keep it simple. So, for example, in my team, I have John Stones. I'm 80% sure I'm going to take him out for a Nathan Ake, even though I am very confident about De Bruyne's minutes. But again, Ake could still do fine. Maybe De Bruyne gets a 16, 17 pointer and Ake steady Eddie, gets like 2 clean sheets. 12 points, good enough at his price. So I think I would just do a straight swap to Ake right now.
Yeah, I would also prioritize the triple Arsenal first, triple Arsenal attack first, and then because there's more rotation in the City attack, and again, I'm not sure who the third midfielder would be. Again, the points are also distributed, so I think it's better to have one defense, one midfielder, and Haaland as a nailed-on player. Okay, that wrapping up City, we have one player which is overperforming his numbers to an extent I can't explain. And it's a player that I dread almost every game week because I can't have him, I don't own him. And it feels like everyone in the world owns him. It's Mitoma. And he's on phenomenal run of form. So let's just address that. Yes, he's on form. And he's banging in goals, which he, on a normal day, probably still would, but most likely wouldn't. His XG numbers are decent. His goals are obviously inflated to that. His XA numbers are also decent, and he's at par with his XA. He's not overperformed a lot, but for XG, yes, he's overperformed a lot.
Yep.
So now in a situation, so it's very simple. So if you have Matoma, it's a hold. You don't worry about the blank game week. You figure it out later on. And I'll explain why and how. If you have Mitoma, I think it's a hands down hold because he will have a double in 26 or 27 or even both. So no need to sell him. But if you don't have Mitoma, and let's say you have three Arsenal set, you have your City triple set, you have your United double set. Basically, you're in my situation where you have a set team and you can get Mitoma for an Andreas this week. So would you take a chance because his form is so good, or would you let go of this chance and possibly consider after 25?
Yep. I think you said it there, right? For me, with his price, and we are in a season where price is not really a concern. Like
Yeah,
I've got like 8.8 million in the bank right now, and I see a lot of teams where they have like 3, 4 million lying in the bank just like that. So yes, Mitoma is, I think, the optimal fifth midfielder, regardless of the formation that you're playing. You could be playing a 3-5-2, or you could be playing a 3-4-3, right? So he's not really the guy that you have to worry about putting in your starting 11 every week. So if you are in that situation where your team is pretty much set, you figure out you're in that optimal position where you've got the Arsenal players sorted out, you've got optimal City coverage, you've prepared all right to take care of the Liverpool double game weeks very soon. No other fires to burn. I think Mitoma is a fine transfer in, but yeah, if these things are not addressed, then I think you should. You can probably look at him as an Almiron earlier in the season, where a lot of things did not make sense. The underlying data was not great, but he was still doing well, and he's got a PhD in dribbling. So I think he's given a lot of trouble to defenders like Trent, and right now he's riding very high on confidence. He's just going on. It may continue, but because 25 could be a blank, and you don't really want to be in a situation where you've just got 5 or 6 players in a blank game week. So keeping that in mind, I think it's a don't buy, don't sell player. That I think that is how I would term it. Unless you've got all your boxes ticked, and yeah, you just want to burn a transfer, get Mitoma in as the fifth midfielder only, not as a fourth midfielder.
because I'm genuinely considering him. So it depends on the Fulham fixture at the moment as well. So for people who are off this as well, Fulham versus Sunderland replay happens tonight when we release this podcast. And if Fulham lose, they will guarantee have a fixture in 28 and 25 as of now. If they win, they could have a fixture in 28 or could blank. So if they lose, it's much more easier for us to plan our blank and double game week, and then it makes sense to hold the Fulham guys, which is Mitrovic and Andreas, for the 25 game week blank because they give you two extra players. But if they do not, if they win, because the match is probably at Craven Cottage and probably they will win this one. So in that case, I think even if you want Mitoma, you can buy him this week. And I say this because he's in form. So usually what I've seen in terms of players, when a player is streaky, he's streaky for a limited period of time. So it could be 5, 6, 7 game weeks. It happened with Almiron last season. It happened. I think last season it happened with Lingard, Bilic. I remember it happened with Gundogan a couple of seasons ago. Happens with Rashford now, and then Madison is such a player. So you want to get him when he's streaky, which is now. Now, if you're worried about the blank gaming 25, I think if you have something like Trippier Shaw, like a Trippier and Triple United team at the moment, you can sell off Bruno to possibly a Kevin De Bruyne or Salah, and you can let go of Shaw to a Tarkowski. And that way you can bench Mitoma and you can continue having him in 26 and 27. You can later on figure out 28, but as of now, you don't need to worry about him blanking in 25. And I don't think you should stop, like, and it should stop you from owning Mitoma because I did this mistake last game week. I did not go for Mitoma because I didn't know there would be an Arsenal double and a Liverpool double in 25. I didn't go Mitoma. It was a swing, 10-point swing, just because he had a blank, and that stopped me getting Mitoma. But now I realize I could let go of Shaw and still have would have held Mitoma. So personally, if you can rectify, if you interested in Mitoma, I think you should go for it and not worry about the blank. And there's every reason to buy him and no reason to sell him at all.
Yep. I mean, yeah, that pretty much sums it up, right?
Yep.
It's not really a player that could uh, make a huge impact, but if you're buying him, you have to be mentally prepared that this guy's the fifth midfielder. He's not really someone that you want to ship. You just buy him there and leave him in there for
Yeah, and
the
you'll have
foreseeable.
benching headache generally. Like even this week, let's say even if you buy him, you might have to bench someone like a Bruno or a Mitrovic or maybe an Arsenal player. You won't bench an Arsenal player for sure, but what are your options? Let's say your midfield is Rashford, Bruno, Saka, Odegaard, attack is Nketiah, Haaland, and Mitrovic. You have to bench some of these players to accommodate Mitoma this game week. So it will always be a big benching headache. And remember, that's going to come up every game week if you want Mitoma.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
it's
if
a
you
good
if you
headache,
don't,
but it's a headache.
yeah, I mean, and so even I've sort of went with a strong bench. So that's a part and parcel. But yeah, I think the answer to that totally comes down to your state of team and in what sort of position you are in right now. But yeah, if you've got some immediate issues, that require your attention, you don't have the optimal Arsenal three, or you don't have enough City players, then I think your focus should be there. So it just comes down to your hierarchy of importance, right? So I think that is something that you have to consider. Look at your teams, and if those things are being taken care of, then yeah, Mitoma could be a good fun. But again, should nothing more than a fifth midfielder. Uh, I think that pretty much sums up Mitoma. Anything more that you want to add, Anshuman?
I don't think there's anything. We'll touch
Right.
upon a small team that we want to talk, not a small team, but a team here we want to talk about,
The
which is
Harry
going
Kane
through,
team.
yeah, which is going
Yep.
through an injury crisis as well. So Loris is out to about 6 to 8 weeks, which enables Ben Foster, as they say it, for 3.9 million, and a lot of people are attracted to it because of his price. And I am not. I'm absolutely not because I don't think Tottenham are a good defensive side. Without Loris, they're even more bad. So I would personally stay far, far away. And a lot of people are doubting Kepa. I think he's still the best keeper in the game. He's having double-digit hauls almost every game week. Chelsea look better. So on a personal note, from as a Chelsea fan, I think we look defensively much better than attacking wise. So I think we can still bank on more clean sheets for Kepa, and I don't think you should touch upon that keeper pairing. But Harry Kane, the fixture run from now till 29 is appealing. I wouldn't deny. Uh,
It it does, and yeah. So
It
I
seems
think
like the
only
we have the wrong ticker. I think we have we have Gaming 24 says Tottenham. It should be West Ham, but yeah,
so. Yeah,
I
that's so. Yeah, the fixture ticker is not sort of
I'll pull up the
correct, but
fixtures. Wait, wait. I'll pull up the fixtures. I might have it here. Yeah. So you have the fixtures, and there you can look at Spurs. You have Leicester, West Ham, Chelsea, Wolves till 25, and yeah,
and so yeah, I think Kane sort of again, like, speaking on their defense, and I think only Fraser Foster could make Hugo Lloris look good. So that is, Fraser Foster, what he's all about. We've seen he's had some shockers when he was playing for Southampton in the past. So I think not just defensively, it could also impact them going forward, because yes, Lloris was all right, but at times where you needed him in the build up, he would still do an all right job. But for someone like Foster, he's just the kind of keeper who would just boot the ball ahead. Again, it's not very crucial, but if your defense has been shaky, which has been the case with Tottenham for a while, now you have a keeper who's even more unreliable. I think that could impact Tottenham as a team. That is my immediate uh, problem, you could say. But Harry Kane has been consistent. We've seen it. Not just in the past. We've been seeing it throughout the season. And if this was any other season, right? We'd be looking at Harry Kane as the perma captain, if I'm not wrong. He's doing that good. It's purely because there's a guy named Haaland in the league now that he's sort of going under the radar. But yes, even though the fixtures, I think they're a mixed bag. So, uh, but the consistency that Kane has shown, I think he's reliable enough. Uh, a quick question, right? Obviously, Kane has done well. A lot of people have him. Let's say if you don't have Kane right now, would you still buy him?
Oh, I'm absolutely tempted. I wouldn't deny it. I am genuinely tempted to rip apart my team entirely for the Leicester fixture. And it's purely down to the fact that he has such a good record against Leicester. I just can't ignore it. He has about what 8 goals, 5, 6 assists in the last certain 10, 12 games, and he just bangs against Leicester. Then he plays against West Ham again, who he has a good record against. In big games, he's performing irrespectively. He then plays Wolves. I think the fixtures ahead, if I can read them out to you, are this week. So he plays Wolves, and then they follow up fixtures with Nottingham Forest, Southampton, Everton, Brighton, Bournemouth till game week 32. So when you look at him, you know that he's a long-term hold. And I think depend your question. The answer to your question depends on your free hit strategy. So if you can field possibly a team in 25 with Harry Kane and free hit in 28 instead of 32, I think going Harry Kane makes complete sense because then you get the entire fixture run. But all on the contrary, if you're someone who's free hitting in 32 and wildcarding in 29 and dead ending your team in 28, then you're not getting the entire potential out of Kane's fixture run because then you're essentially looking at three fixtures, which is Bulls, Nottingham Forest, and then the blank. Southampton against the blank. So I think in that scenario, you ought to look at the bigger picture and look at the free hit strategy, which we'll discuss in a while. But I think the answer still depends on the free strategy personally. If you still can go Kane, I would. But prioritize a double game week player this week if possible.
I think I sort of like agree. And for some reason, Harry Kane reminds me uh, for the old Premier League fans. If you remember when Diego Costa was still at Chelsea, he was not really the kind of guy who would score like 2 or 3 goals, like every game week, but he's very consistent. So that's what Kane has been doing. If you look at his, yes, there's a double-digit haul every now and then, but there are those consistent 6 pointers, 8 pointers. So
Yeah.
there is a who's just ticking along every week, and you don't really have to look at him. So from that perspective, yes, if you don't really have if you don't have an emergency in your team, I think he could be a potential transfer in. But we're really looking at a scenario where suddenly so many teams have double game weeks coming up, and the classic trap. It could be a trap, or it could be a big swing upside. So we don't know that yet, but yes, the logical thing is to attack the double game week fixtures. That is the nature of the game. That is what FPL is all about. So, yep, that
The other thing is basically you sort out your free hit strategy and probably go Kane after the Chelsea fixture. So you let go of this Leicester fixture. I know it's very enticing, very tempting. Personally, the only way I've talked myself out of is that I get a Bruno who plays Leicester too the next game week. So that could work in our favor. But apart from it, you let go of this Leicester fixture. The West Ham fixture could be cagey. West Ham have looked defensively better. Chelsea is a tough game overall. And then beyond that, if you're free hitting in 28, you can hold Kane from then till 32, which allows you to have which is where most of his good fixtures fall.
yeah.
So that could influence your chip strategy as well. But yeah, that's my take on Kane.
Yeah. Again, this could be sound like anti-Kane, but there's a lot of recency bias also. I feel with Harry Kane that big win against City, and suddenly everyone is talking about him. But if you really just look at the recent past, apart from the Palace game, Tottenham have been, I think, pretty bad. And I remember a couple of weeks back, their fans wanted Conte out. They were fed up of the team. A couple of good results, and the mood has suddenly changed. So they've been a mixed bag, is what I feel. The City game was all right. I mean, obviously, it's a game that City have historically struggled in. When they play Tottenham away, they don't tend to do well. And it was the same scenario yet again. Against Fulham, yes, he got on the score sheet, but before that, City away, they were pretty bad, even though Kane did score a goal. He got, like, I think, a 5 pointer in that game. And
Yeah.
Arsenal, they were pretty much so. It's There's a lot of mixed bag, and they've been up and down. So I think if you don't go for Kane, and with so many other good options available, I think it could still work out all right. It's
So
not
I'll give you
something that
something.
I'm
I'll
really
give you a
afraid.
stat. which justify the price tag. Throughout the season, from game week 1 till game week 22, Kane has blanked only 5 times till now. So he's either got a goal or an assist every game week apart from 5 game weeks, which included fixtures like Arsenal recently, Villa, game week 1, if I remember correctly, and a couple of fixtures in between, which could be tough fixtures as well. So essentially speaking, that Kane has a good record overall. So his blank other was against United in game week 12. There is when he blanked. And yeah, again he got a blank against Bournemouth, where he did play 90 minutes, but he couldn't do much. He got a yellow card as well. Apart from that, all of the games he's hauled something or the other. So I think he's the only premium apart from Haaland which justifies the price tag. He's getting you points essentially. Be it couldn't be double digit haul, but he's getting you 5, 6, and essentially that's what you want from a second premium because your captaincy is always on Haaland. So you just want consistent points from your premium because you're never going to captain him. And I think this is what Kane delivers and will continue to deliver going ahead.
I think that was going to be my question. That we're heading towards so many double game weeks and potential blanks coming up as well. So I think transfers are precious than ever, especially when you're
Bro,
looking at a player that you're not going to captain in any of the games. Do you want to spend your transfers on that player? That is the question that I keep asking
not this
myself.
game
And
week, I think, yeah.
yeah. So
Just
yeah,
because they don't double, I wouldn't do it this week. But again,
yeah.
focus on your chip strategy because that might gaming 25 would be crucial going into your
Yeah,
chip
yeah.
strategy.
I think he's definitely an elite asset. There is no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But it's just the circumstances right now. Uh, I don't think there's a lot you would miss if you don't go for him. Yeah, unless if he does a Haaland and scores back-to-back
A
hat
hat
tricks,
trick,
and
yeah.
yeah, we'll all be getting him. But yeah, it's really like if you were in a position similar to Anshuman, where he probably thinks that he's got most of the bases covered, then you could look at someone like a Kane, and like he's probably considering Mitoma right now. So yeah, that's what it comes down to.
But
I think
just
that
want to highlight, it could be a bit harsh going for him this week and ripping apart your team, taking a -8. Probably just prioritize the double game week players. Now, especially Arsenal because they have a double going ahead. City have a double now. Liverpool could have a double. So prioritize the double game weeks first and then figure out Kane. That would be my say. I think he could haul against Leicester, but then you have to somewhere adjust and look at points somewhere else.
yeah, I think that pretty much covers
Yeah.
obviously the Harry Kane team and Harry Kane himself. So. Uh, we'll move on and we look at the fixtures, and you spoke about, we've both spoken about a lot about the chip strategy and potentially free hitting with the blank game weeks and doubles coming inside. So take us through the fixture ticker and what have we got in storage. Tell us.
So firstly, thank you to Ben Kerlin for people who don't know him and follow him yet. If you're living under a rock, Ben Kerlin is one of the best accounts to follow on Twitter for FPL. He does this thing where he predicts the blank and double game weeks way ahead in time, so that you get enough time to plan your chip strategy and plan your transfers. Very essential, absolute follow, and you should go and check him out on Twitter. So this table is taken from Ben Quinn as well. If it seems confusing, don't worry, I'll explain it to you. Game week 23, we have two doubles, Arsenal and City. Game week 25, we have four doubles, Arsenal, Everton, Liverpool, and Wolves. We have four blanks as well, which is Brighton, Newcastle, Brentford, and Manchester United. 26-27 could be potentially a double for Bournemouth, Crystal, Brighton, and maybe Newcastle, with Brighton having the largest possibility of the double. 28 will be a big blank depending on the FA Cup results. So, but what we look at in terms of odds, so the percentage of blanks are depending on the opposition and like odds, predicting odds or the betting odds. And we expect Man City to blank. We expect Leicester, Southampton, West Ham, Tottenham, Brighton, Brentford, and United to blank. 29 was supposed to be a double game week, big double game week, but since Arsenal have a double in 25, they won't double in 29 anymore. We can see Everton, possibly Aston Villa, Nottingham, Chelsea, and Tottenham doubling up, and maybe Fulham, maybe just Fulham doubling up in 29. The other, maybe doubling up. The other fixture that you can see is Liverpool, possibly Leeds, Southampton, Leicester, West Ham, Brentford, Newcastle, Manchester United, and Brighton. There are more likely teams to double. Essentially, that's the table, and 2032 again is going to be a big blank due to the FA Cup semi-finals. Now, why I talk about chip strategies? Potentially, before this, there were only two ways when you wanted to play a free hit, which is either navigating blank gaming 28 or navigating blank gaming 32, essentially. And you can use it in 29 or 37 as well to attack the fixtures, but most probably the wider strategy was using it in a blank game, which is 28 or 32. But Game Week 25 comes as a curveball. Nobody expected or predicted it. And it's not just a blank, but it's a double as well. So it gives you the maximum out of your free hit chip as well. Personally, I just cut it short for 25. I don't think it's the greatest game week to use your free hit because you're almost set up for the blank game week. People have planned out. They have not taken Mitoma, so that's not an issue. People have already let go of Newcastle players. I don't think apart from Trippier, which is on hold irrespective, you have any Newcastle asset. United assets will be let go of, so especially Bruno and Shaw, so you can let them go off. Nobody has Brentford assets, so the blank can be covered, and we are already targeting. We have a double up on Arsenal. Shaw could become a Tarkowski, which gives you the Everton double. Bruno could become a Liverpool asset, which gives you the Liverpool double. And Wolves is probably an avoid because they will for sure blank in 28. They have an okayish double in 25, and the fixtures up around it are also not that good, and they're not very appealing in general in terms of points. So 25 seems like a team where you're more sorted out. And also, if let's say you have Fulham players, then you're pretty much more sorted out because you don't need to use a free hit. The tricky part is to give me 28. So if Fulham lose today, then I think 28 free hit is not an option at all because it enables you Fulham players which you already probably own, which is like Andrian and Mitrovic. It enables you Liverpool players because then Liverpool and Fulham will not blank in 28. So then you get Liverpool. You can add up on Liverpool players in 25 because they double there. They play Manchester United and Bournemouth in the next two, and Fulham in 28, and potentially also have a double in 29. So if Fulham lose tonight, that's the best case scenario. You don't have to worry about a free hit, and then you can essentially just free hit in 32, navigate the blank, get in your team there, get in your team possibly in 28, and then wildcard in 33 or 29 depending on strategy. But if Fulham win, then there's a case of wildcarding, free hitting in 28 because as what I see and the pro of wild free hitting in 28 is the teams that you want to have till 32, which is Arsenal, City, possibly United, a Chelsea defender, as on the top of the list, Brighton. All of these teams have good fixtures either around like on both sides of 28. So before 28, they have good fixtures. Post 28, they have good fixtures. So the the opposite logic is basically that you hold those players till 28, so you don't have to worry about the blank. You play the free hit chip, you continue holding them post 28 as well. So Mitoma as an example, Kane is a very good example of this. And then in 32, you dead in your team, wildcard in 33, and then you bench push in 34 and maximize the chip. The only downside is obviously you're wildcarding very late in the season, so it gives you less time to possibly make the most out of a wildcard. I think it gives you the maximum out of your bench boost chip as well. The other logic is obviously to free hit in 32. Nothing against it, but I think you're if you're not free hitting 28, what it does is basically you're very narrow minded in terms of your pick. So you won't go for a Kane, which you would otherwise if you're free hitting in 28. You won't go for a Mitoma maybe. Or you stick to a plan where you want to go to Salah, then you remove him, or maybe you don't take a punt on the Chelsea attack. When you're free hitting 28, that allows you that potential. That's the only pro of going free hit in 28. Apart from that, 32 looks better because you'll have a wider range of data. You'll have more knowledge of who doubles in 29, and you'll know who should be doubling in 34 as well.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think
that's my
there's
small rant
a
on the free
lot of
hit chip.
yeah, there's a lot of information out there, but yeah, we've just put it, we hope, in the best way possible to help you navigate. And like we always say, right? A lot of it comes down to your team structure,
Team
and we've
structure.
covered all those scenarios as well. So uh, it totally has to. But yeah, this is like an FYI right now. We will discuss these things in a lot more detail as we get closer to these game weeks. So I'm sure that the pod before game week 25, we will have a major section where we talk about these scenarios again and how, if you are to play a free hit in 25, we'll obviously present you with the optimal free hit team for that week as well. But yeah, it's just a heads up for now,
Yeah,
something
this is
that you should
probably
keep
for
an
the
eye
free
out
hit.
for. And
Yeah, and in
yeah,
case you want us to cover in-depth chip strategies, free hit, wildcard, bench boost, and possibly triple captain as well, comment down below chip strategy. So we come out with a podcast episode in next week before Gaming 24 deadline, giving you more insight and explaining more of this. We would love to do so, but we need to know if people are interested in that. So make sure you comment chip strategy down in the comment section below.
indeed, yeah, yeah. And anything more on chip strategy or fixtures for now, Anshuman?
I think triple captaincy, gotta play him in 23. Arsenal might look enticing. They're the best attack. They have good fixtures. Saka could be a triple captain option. I don't think so. The only reason is the points are so scattered. Wherein in City, you know that if City score 4 goals, Haaland will be involved in at least one, most likely involved in two, could be involved in three as well. Could be involved in four as well. You never know. So the potential of the ceiling and the base for Haaland is way more. If you still have the triple captaincy chip, 23 is probably the last game week where you don't want to extend it and hold it. Play it. I think that's a good game week to play your triple captaincy chip. And yeah, then you can figure out your wildcard. Essentially, before you wildcard, you need to plan your wildcard in a way where you're dead ending your team a game week before your wildcard. So let's say you're wildcarding in 29, you end your team in 28 in a way that you don't have to keep players that you want in 29. So you might want someone like Shaw in 29, so and he doesn't play in 28, so you can sell him and then you can re-get him again. You can buy him again on your wildcard. That's essentially what dead ending means.
Yeah, all fair points, especially the Haaland triple captaincy discussion. And yes, Arsenal are on fire, and we've spoken about them in detail. But we saw Manchester City's underlying data earlier, and despite the perception that they are not as good anymore, from 17 to 22, the team that is first for XG in the league is actually not Arsenal; it's Manchester City. So it's just that they've been a bit inconsistent, but if the underlying data is good, the consistency will come because they're doing the right things. It's just not translating to as many goals as they should. Because if you look at the underlying data, like I'll just read it out for the viewers and the listeners. They're first for XG, and the XG that they've created in this period between game week 17 to 22 is 15.37, and they are third for the number of goals scored, that is 13. So yes, they are underperforming right now. It has been an issue, but the encouraging thing is that they are creating those chances, and soon they might start overperforming, maybe in the next few weeks, to compensate for the underperformance, because it eventually evens out when it comes to top teams. So
Yeah.
if the underlying data suggests that you should hold on, and Haaland is a proven asset, just play the triple captaincy.
No, no.
I think it's a chip that you should not overthink. It's
Yeah, you
just
shouldn't.
pretty
Just
straight
play it,
up.
and I
Yeah.
think it usually works out. And also, Aston Villa just conceded four from Leicester. I think it's going to be a good matchup at home at Etihad for Manchester City, and you expect Haaland to score at least 2 goals against them.
Yeah, I am all smiles about that. I think we've pretty much covered everything. Should we move on to our teams,
Yeah,
Anshuman?
we'll quickly dive into our teams and then wrap this podcast up. This is my team from last week, I think. We'll go for your team first, and then we'll figure out my team. This is your team.
Yep.
So
So that is my team. I
I'll read it out for the
am
viewers.
probably looking at.
Yeah, you want me to
Yep.
read it out
I
for the
will
viewers?
just. Yeah. Yeah.
So he has David Dea in goal. He has Trippier, Trent, which is a good player to have at this point, knowing that he doubles at 25. Shaw, Odegaard, March. He went for March instead of Mitoma, Martinelli, Rashford.
Yep. So this is the team from the previous week. Obviously, the all my free transfer in the previous game week. What I'm looking to do is I have John Stones sitting on the bench, so I'm just looking to switch John Stones, take him out, and get Nathan Aki in as my third
Just
City
a
player. I've
second.
already got
Can you
two.
repeat the last 1 minute? I think we had a bit of an audio loss. Can you repeat the last minute? What are your plans?
Sure. Apologies for the technical issue. So yeah, just to reiterate it once again. So I've got Mahrez on the bench, but that's not going to be the case. Obviously, I'm going to bring him in, and he will start. March will make his way on the bench. So that is one change within the team. In terms of transfers, I have two free transfers right now. So I am again looking to just use one of them and roll the other one. So I've got John Stones who's sitting on my bench right now. The plan is to take him out, get an Nathan Ake in, and play Nathan Ake instead of Luke Shaw, who obviously he has a good fixture, but uh, I can't bench Trippier. I sort of rate Trent, even though Liverpool have been. So I think it's going to be a 50-50 between Trent and Shaw. I'm going to bench one of them. So that is the planned move in terms of transfer. And Haaland will be the captain, even though the screenshot, is on Rashford right now, but that's not going to be the case. Cannot bet against Haaland, especially in a double game week. So yes, Haaland captaincy and just one transfer, Nathan Ake. That's it.
I think that's a decent plan, and this is probably the current game week, and Rashford still has a game to go. And when you move to my team, this is what my team looks. I made a rash transfer to Havertz. In hindsight, I feel like it was too much of a bunt. I did take a chance. He had almost three big chances, and he could have hauled that game. He hit the post as well. But anyways, going ahead, I have Kepa in goal, White, Shaw, Trippier, Bueno, Akanji in defense, Saka, De Bruyne, Fernandes, Rashford, Nketiah, Havertz, and Haaland. So if you look at my midfield, I'm pretty much settled and sorted. I don't have to move around a lot. I probably will save a transfer unless I go Andreas to Mitoma and plan to play him over Havertz, or I look to sell Havertz for someone else. So this essentially looks my team. I don't think I'm going to make a lot of changes to this, but as of now, that's the game set. As of now, I'm saving my transfer. I think I will bank on holding the team, and then I will make a move later on from Mitoma from 25. Or it also will depend on my free hit strategy. So if I decide to go free hit earlier in 28, then things will change. But as of now, this stays, and a lot depends on the Fulham fixture. So if Fulham lose tonight, a lot of this will change.
Yep, indeed, a lot could change, and yeah, I think it's going to be fun. So many different chip strategies, and yeah, a lot more spice, a lot more things to unfold in the coming weeks. But I think that's it. We've covered a lot of information today. It's been a long one, but it's been lovely, and you know, just a lot of things coming through. I'm pretty excited personally. So yeah, any last thoughts, Anshuman?
No, I think don't overthink it. Prioritize the double game week players ahead of players like Kane, Mitoma, or single game week punts like Havertz. I think still prioritize City, who have a double, Arsenal, who have a double, Everton, who will potentially have a double. So if you're looking for a defender, I think Tarkowski is hands down one of the best defenders you can get, and he's 4.2, so that's not a worry in terms of money. And keep an eye for the Liverpool assets. Don't ignore them, but don't overemphasize on having Liverpool assets as well. So from now till 25, probably just monitor them. Could be a Trent, could be a Salah, could be a Jota because he's coming back. I think Gakpo and Nunes would be minutes risk, but Firmino could be a minutes risk equally. So we don't know. So basically, just keep an eye. Don't really jump on them or really stress about it. I think game week 25 is when you take that decision and let it happen.
Yep, yep. Be careful, especially when it comes to Darwin Nunes, coming from someone who keeps owning him and he keeps disappointing. And I just have this feeling that I'm gonna go down that path again. It's
Yeah, same,
inevitable.
same. I have owned him for what 6, 7 weeks. Never hauled for me, and I think I might just have him again. So we might be in the same. But I think it's probably a template. Even Mihir does this a lot. I think Mihir and Manan both had Darwin Nunes for a while, and he's blank for all of us on the pod. So I think it's probably an FPL variance podcast thing at the moment where we all own Darwin Nunes and he blanks for us.
Yep, indeed. But we are ready to tap into the variance once again, and that's the theme. That's the theme of our pod as well. It's been amazing. A lot of things covered, and it was lovely to be back. And it's a goodbye from now.
Yeah,
We'll see you again next week.
this is FPL Tips signing off alongside Zeeshan. Cheers.
Cheers.